Long ago, in the city of Jerusalem, there was a very special night. The air was cool, the streets were busy because many people had come to celebrate a big feast called Passover. Lamps were glowing in houses, families were eating
Take
together.
this and
It
share
looked
it
like a
among you.
happy night.
Thank you.
But inside one upstairs room, something very important was about to happen. Jesus Christ
Take,
sat
eat,
at a
this is
table
my
with
body.
his 12 disciples.
Drink from
These
it,
were
all
his
of you.
close friends, the men who had walked with him, learned from him, and listened to his stories. They did not fully understand that this night would be the last meal they would eat with him before something very sad happened. The room was quiet but warm. The table had bread and cups of wine. The disciples were talking softly. Some were smiling, some were tired, but Jesus looked different. His face was calm, but there was deep sadness in his eyes. He knew what was coming. As they began to eat, Jesus picked up the bread. He held it gently in his
Take,
hands.
eat, this is
He
my
thanked
body.
God for it.
Do this in
Then he broke
remembrance
it
of
into
me.
pieces. He gave it to his disciples and said in a soft voice, "Take and eat. This is my body, given for you." The disciples looked at each other. They did not fully understand. It was just bread. But Jesus was speaking in a special way. He was telling them that soon his body would be hurt. Then he took the cup. He thanked God again. He passed it to them and said, "Drink from it. This is my blood. It is poured out to forgive many people." The room became very quiet. No one laughed anymore. No one spoke loudly. Something serious was happening. Then Jesus said something that shocked them. "One of you will betray me." The disciples were confused. Betray? What does that mean? They began to whisper. One by one they asked, "Is it me?" "Surely not me, Lord." Even Judas asked the question. Jesus knew who it was, but he did not shout. He did not get angry. He stayed calm. His heart was heavy, but he was still full of love. After they ate, something else surprising happened. Jesus stood up from the table. He took off his outer robe. He wrapped a towel around his waist. Then he poured water into a basin. The disciples watched in shock. Jesus, their teacher and master, knelt down and began washing their feet. In those days, washing feet was the job of a servant. Feet were dirty from walking on dusty roads, but Jesus, the Son of God, chose to serve. When he came to Peter, Peter pulled back. "No, Lord, you will never wash my feet." Jesus looked at him kindly and said, "If I do not wash you, you cannot share with me." Peter did not fully understand, but he loved Jesus. "Then wash all of me," he said. Jesus smiled gently. One by one he washed their feet. When he finished, he said, "I have given you an example. Love each other, serve each other." The room felt different now. The air felt heavy. It was as if time was slowing down. After singing a hymn together, they stood up. The lamps flickered softly. The streets outside were darker now. The city was growing quiet. Jesus looked at his disciples one more time. "Come," he said gently, "let us go." And together, they stepped out into the night. The moon shone above them as they walked away from the house, heading toward a quiet garden place. They did not know that before the night was over, everything would change. After leaving the city of Jerusalem, Jesus and his disciples walked quietly through the dark streets. The night was cool. The moon was shining above them. Everything looked peaceful. But inside, something heavy was about to happen. They walked toward a quiet place called the Garden of Gethsemane. It was a garden filled with olive trees. It was a place where Jesus Christ often went to pray. It was calm and silent, far from the noise of the city. When they arrived, Jesus stopped walking. He turned to his disciples. His face looked serious, and his heart felt very sad. "Sit here," he told most of them. Then he took Peter, James, and John a little farther into the garden. These were three of his closest friends. Jesus looked at them and said, "My soul is very sad, even to the point of death. Stay here, keep watch with me." The disciples had never seen him look this way before. He was always strong, he was always calm, but now he looked troubled. Jesus walked a little farther away from them, knelt down, then he fell with his face to the ground and began to pray. "Father," he said softly, "If it is possible, let this cup pass from me, but not what I want, what you want." He knew that pain was coming. He knew he would be hurt. He knew he would suffer on the cross. He felt afraid. He felt the weight of the world's sin. But even though he felt scared, he chose to obey God. After praying for some time, Jesus stood up and walked back to his friends. But when he reached them, he saw something that made him sad. They were sleeping. Their eyes were heavy. Their bodies were tired. They could not stay awake. "Peter," Jesus said gently, "could you not stay awake with me for 1 hour? Watch and pray so you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the body is weak." Then Jesus went back again to pray. Again he said, "My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, may your will be done." His sweat fell to the ground. The Bible says it was like drops of blood. That is how heavy his heart was. Again he returned to his disciples. Again they were sleeping. They did not know what to say. Their eyes were too heavy. So Jesus left them and prayed a third time. He prayed the same words. He gave himself fully to God's plan. Then suddenly, from far away there was a sound. Footsteps, voices, the clinking of metal. Torches flickered in the darkness. Jesus stood up calmly. He looked toward the light coming through the trees. "Get up," he said to his disciples. "The time has come. The one who betrays me is here." Out of the darkness came Judas, one of the 12. He was not alone. Behind him were soldiers and religious leaders. They carried swords.
"Charge forward! Onwards! With blood, no mercy!"
Jesus. "Rabbi," he said, and he kissed him. That kiss was the sign. The soldiers stepped forward and grabbed Jesus. Peter pulled out his sword and cut off the ear of one servant. But Jesus stopped him. "Put your sword away," Jesus said. "Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me?" Then, even in that moment, Jesus touched the servant's ear and healed him. The soldiers tied Jesus' hands. And what did the disciples do? They ran away. The garden that was quiet before was now full of fear. The torches moved away into the night as they took Jesus. And just like that, the peaceful night had turned into a night of sorrow. The soldiers held tightly onto Jesus Christ and led him away from the quiet garden. The olive trees became smaller behind them. The torches burned bright in the dark night. The sound of heavy footsteps filled the air. Jesus did not fight. He did not shout. He did not run. He walked calmly, even though his hands were tied. They first took him to the house of the high priest. Many religious leaders were already awake. They were waiting. It was late at night, but the room was full of angry faces. They wanted to find a reason to punish him. They began asking him questions. "Are you the Son of God? Did you say you would destroy the temple?" Some people stood up and told lies about him. One person said one thing. Another person said something different. Their stories did not match, but the leaders did not care. They only wanted something they could use against him. Jesus stayed quiet. The high priest became angry. "Answer us," he shouted. "Tell us if you are the Christ." Jesus looked at him calmly and said, "You have said so, and you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power." The high priest tore his clothes in anger. "That is blasphemy," he cried. "We do not need more witnesses." The men in the room began to mock Jesus. They spat on him. They covered his eyes. They hit him and said, "Prophesy, tell us who hit you." It was a long, cruel night. Outside, in the courtyard, Peter stood near a fire. He was trying to stay warm. A servant girl looked at him closely. "You were with Jesus," she said. Peter shook his head quickly. "No, I was not." Another person pointed at him. "Yes, you are one of his followers." Again, Peter said, "I don't know the man." A third time, someone said, "Surely you are one of them." Peter became afraid. "I do not know him," he shouted. At that moment, a rooster crowed. Jesus turned and looked at Peter. Peter remembered that Jesus had told him, "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." Peter ran away crying. His heart was broken. When morning came, they decided to take Jesus to the Roman governor. His name was Pontius Pilate. The sun was rising over Jerusalem. The streets were filling with people again. But this was not a normal morning. They brought Jesus before Pilate. Pilate looked at him carefully. "Are you the king of the Jews?" Pilate asked. Jesus answered quietly, "You say so." Pilate questioned him more, but Jesus did not defend himself. He did not argue. He did not beg. Pilate could see something was different about this man. He could not find any real crime in him. "I find no fault in him," Pilate told the crowd. But the religious leaders stirred up the people. Soon the crowd began shouting loudly, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Pilate was confused. "Why? What evil has he done?" But the crowd shouted even louder, "Crucify him!" Pilate felt afraid of the crowd. He did not want trouble. He did not want a riot, so he made a choice. He took water and washed his hands. "I am innocent of this man's blood." Then he gave the order. Jesus would be crucified. The soldiers took him away again. They removed his clothes and put a purple robe on him. They twisted sharp thorns into a crown and pushed it onto his head. They placed a stick in his hand and bow in fake worship. "Hail, King of the Jews!" they mocked. They hit him again and again. Then they took off the robe and put his own clothes back on him. Outside, the cross was waiting. After Pontius Pilate gave the order, the soldiers led Jesus Christ away. The morning sun was rising over Jerusalem. People were gathering in the streets. Some were curious. Some were angry. Some were just watching to see what would happen. The soldiers brought out a large wooden cross. It was heavy and rough. Splinters stuck out from the wood. They placed it on Jesus' shoulders. Jesus had already been beaten. His back hurt. His head was bleeding from the crown of thorns. His body was weak. But still, he tried to walk. Step by step, he moved forward. The soldiers pushed him. The crowd followed. Dust rose from the ground. Some people laughed and shouted mean words. "Save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down." But not everyone was cruel. Some women in the crowd began to cry when they saw him suffering. Jesus turned to them and said gently, "Do not cry for me. Cry for yourselves and your children." Even while he was in pain, he was thinking about others. After walking for some distance, Jesus became very weak. The cross was too heavy. He stumbled and fell to the ground. The soldiers did not want to wait, so they grabbed a man from the crowd. His name was Simon of Cyrene. "You carry it!" they shouted. Simon had just come from the countryside. He did not expect this, but he had no choice. He lifted the cross and followed behind Jesus. The long walk continued until they reached a place outside the city. It was a hill called Golgotha. The name meant place of the skull. The sky seemed quieter there. The air felt heavy. This was the place where criminals were punished. The soldiers prepared the cross. They offered Jesus something to drink mixed with bitter herbs, but he refused. Then they laid him down on the wood. The sound of hammer striking nail filled the air. They nailed his hands. They nailed his feet. Then they lifted the cross and dropped it into a hole in the ground. Jesus now hung between heaven and earth. Above his head, they placed a sign that read, "Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews." The soldiers sat down nearby. They gambled for his clothes, laughing as if nothing important was happening. 2 criminals were crucified beside him, one on his right and one on his left. People walked by, shaking their heads. "He saved others," they said. "Why can't he save himself?" The religious leaders also mocked him. "If you are God's son, come down from the cross." The first criminal beside him joined in the mocking, but the other criminal spoke up. "Do you not fear God?" he said. "We are punished for what we did, but this man has done nothing wrong." Then he looked at Jesus. "Remember me when you come into your kingdom." Even in deep pain, Jesus answered gently, "Truly today you will be with me in paradise." The sky began to change. Though it was midday, darkness slowly covered the land. The light faded. The air grew still. Darkness covered the land. Even though it was the middle of the day, The sky became dark, like night. The wind slowed down. The crowd that had been shouting became quieter. Something serious was happening. There on the hill of Golgotha, outside the city of Jerusalem, Jesus Christ was still hanging on the cross. His hands were nailed, his feet were nailed, his body was weak, but his heart was still full of love. Below the cross stood some women who loved him very much. Among them was his mother Mary. Her eyes were full of tears. It is very painful for a mother to see her child suffering. She could not take away his pain. She could only stand there and cry. Near her stood one of his disciples, John. Even while Jesus was in pain, he looked down at his mother. He cared about her. "Woman," he said gently, "here is your son." Then he said to John, "Here is your mother." From that day on, John took care of Mary. Even in suffering, Jesus was thinking about others. That is love. The darkness grew deeper. For 3 hours the land stayed dark. It was as if all creation was mourning. Jesus then cried out in a loud voice, my God, why have you forsaken me?" He was feeling the heavy weight of the world's sin. He was carrying all the wrong things people had ever done. He was taking the punishment so others could be forgiven. Some people standing there did not understand. They whispered, "He is calling Elijah." Jesus' lips were dry. His throat hurt. "I am thirsty," he said. A soldier dipped a sponge in sour wine and lifted it to his mouth on a stick. After tasting it, Jesus knew that everything was now finished. Then he said something very important. "It is finished." He had done what he came to do. He had obeyed God. He had given his life. Finally, he cried out in a loud voice one last time, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." Then he bowed his head, and he breathed his last breath. At that very moment, something powerful happened. Inside the temple in Jerusalem, a very thick curtain separated the holy place from the most holy place. That curtain was very strong and very tall. No normal person could tear it. But when Jesus died, the curtain tore in two, from top to bottom. It was not torn by human hands. It was a sign that the way to God was now open. The earth began to shake. Rocks split apart. The ground trembled. The Roman soldier who was standing near the cross felt the shaking. He looked up at Jesus and said, "Surely this man was the Son of God." The crowd that had been mocking him now felt afraid. Some beat their chests in sadness. Slowly, people began to leave the hill. The darkness slowly lifted, but the body of Jesus still hung on the cross. After Jesus Christ breathed his last breath, the hill of Golgotha became very quiet. The loud voices were gone. The mocking had stopped. The sky slowly became bright again. Some people walked away slowly, thinking about what they had just seen. Others were still standing far away, watching in sadness. The women who loved Jesus remained there, their hearts broken. The soldiers were still near the crosses. Because it was almost the Sabbath, a special holy day for the Jews, the leaders did not want the bodies to remain on the crosses. So they asked the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate, for permission to take the bodies down. A good and brave man named Joseph of Arimathea went to Pilate. Joseph was a respected man and a secret follower of Jesus. He loved Jesus, even though he had been quiet about it before. Joseph asked, "May I take the body of Jesus?" Pilate was surprised that Jesus had already died. After confirming it with a soldier, Pilate gave permission. Joseph quickly went to the cross. With care and respect, he and another man named Nicodemus gently took Jesus' body down from the wood. His body was still. His hands that had healed the sick were now wounded. His feet that had walked on water were pierced. They wrapped his body in clean linen cloth. They brought spices, as was the custom for burial. Nearby there was a new tomb. It belonged to Joseph. It had been cut into solid rock. No one had ever been buried there before. They carried Jesus carefully and laid him inside the tomb. The place was quiet. The women who had followed Jesus from Galilee watched closely. They saw where his body was laid. They wanted to come back later with more spices after the Sabbath. Then Joseph and the others rolled a very large stone in front of the entrance. The stone was heavy. It covered the doorway completely. When the stone settled into place, it made a deep sound.
Hey, push harder, brothers! It's moving! Keep the pace! Almost there! One more push!
Their hope seemed buried inside that tomb. The religious leaders were still worried. They remembered that Jesus had once said he would rise again after 3 days. So they went again to Pilate. "Sir," they said, "that deceiver said he would rise in 3 days. Please make the tomb secure." Pilate answered, "You have a guard. Go and make it as secure as you know how." So soldiers went to the tomb. They sealed the stone. They stood guard. No one could enter. No one could leave. The sun began to set. The Sabbath began. Everything became silent. The tomb was closed. The stone was in place. The soldiers were watching. The followers were grieving. It looked like darkness had won. But the story was not finished. The tomb was closed. The big stone was in front. The soldiers were standing guard. It looked like everything was over. The next day was quiet because it was the Sabbath. The disciples stayed hidden inside a house. They were afraid. They whispered to each other, "What will happen now?" Was this the end? Their hearts were heavy. They remembered how Jesus Christ had healed the sick, fed the hungry, and raised the dead. But now he was gone. The one who had given them hope was buried in a tomb. The women also waited. They wanted to go and put more spices on his body. They loved him very much, but they had to wait until the Sabbath was over. Then, very early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, the women walked toward the tomb. The sky was just beginning to turn light blue. The air was cool and quiet. As they walked, they asked each other, "Who will roll the stone away for us?" The stone was very big. They were worried. But when they reached the place, they stopped in shock. The stone was already rolled away. The guards were gone. The ground had shaken earlier, and an angel of the Lord had come down from heaven. His appearance was bright like lightning. He had rolled the stone away and sat on it. The soldiers had been so afraid that they fell down like dead men and later ran away. The women slowly stepped closer to the tomb. Their hearts were beating fast. They looked inside. The body was not there. Instead, they saw an angel who said to them, "Do not be afraid. I know you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen, just as he said." The women could hardly believe it. Their sadness began to mix with joy. "He is alive?" they whispered. The angel told them, "Go quickly and tell his disciples." So the women ran. They were afraid, but they were also very happy. On the way, something amazing happened. Jesus met them. Yes, he was alive. He was not weak. He was not bleeding. He was not on the cross. He was standing before them. They fell at his feet and worshipped him. "Do not be afraid," Jesus said gently. "Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me." Later, Jesus appeared to his disciples. At first they were
Peace
frightened.
I leave with
They
you,
thought
my
they were
peace
seeing
I
a
give to
ghost.
you.
Our
When
Lord
Jesus
and our
put his
God.
hands
Do
on
not
his
be
side.
afraid.
"Touch me," he said. "A spirit does not have flesh and bones as you see I have." He even ate food in front of them to show that he was truly alive. Their fear turned into joy. Their tears turned into smiles. Their hiding turned into boldness. They now understood. Jesus had died to forgive sins. He had risen to give new life. Death did not win. Darkness did not win. Love won. Because he lives, there is hope. Because he rose, there is life after death. Because of him, people can be forgiven and become children of God. What looked like the end was actually a new beginning. And that is the beautiful story of how sadness turned into everlasting hope.